In the twilight of the Eastern Han Dynasty, as corruption festered in the imperial palace and the Yellow Turban Rebellion ravaged the land, three unlikely souls found themselves drawn together by fate and a shared desire to serve the realm. This is the story of how Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei first met and forged a bond that would echo through the ages. Picture this. The year is 184 AD, and the empire is crumbling. The Yellow Turban rebels, led by the mystical Zhang Jue and his brothers, have proclaimed that the blue heaven is dying, and the yellow heaven shall rise. Their uprising spreads like wildfire across the countryside, leaving devastation in its wake. The imperial forces, weakened by years of corruption and mismanagement, struggle desperately to contain the chaos. It's in this crucible of crisis that our story begins. Liu Bei, a descendant of the imperial family, albeit from a very distant branch, found himself in humble circumstances. His lineage traced back to Liu Sheng, a prince of the Western Han Dynasty, but generations had passed and the family fortune had long since evaporated. Liu Bei and his mother scraped by, selling straw sandals and mats in the markets of Zhuo County. Despite his royal blood, he lived the life of a common merchant, his hands calloused from weaving straw, his clothes simple and worn. But Liu Bei possessed something that couldn't be bought or sold, an unwavering sense of duty to the Han Dynasty and its people. When news of the Yellow Turban Rebellion reached his ears, when he heard of villages burned and innocents slaughtered, something stirred deep within his soul. He knew he had to act, yet he also knew the harsh reality of his situation. What could one man do against such overwhelming chaos? What difference could a sandal maker make against armies of rebels? As Liu Bei contemplated his helplessness, he let out a heavy sigh that seemed to carry the weight of his frustration and despair. It was then that a booming voice cut through his melancholy like a blade through silk. A real man should serve his country in times of crisis, not sit around sighing like a woman. The voice belonged to Zhang Fei, and he was impossible to ignore. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with a voice that could shake the rafters, Zhang Fei was the very embodiment of raw, unbridled energy. His family had made their fortune in the butcher's trade, and Zhang Fei himself had inherited not just the business, but the fierce temperament that came with it. His eyes blazed with an intensity that could intimidate the bravest souls, and his black beard seemed to bristle with barely contained fury at the world's injustices. Zhang Fei had heard Liu Bei's sigh and immediately recognized a kindred spirit, someone else who burned with the desire to make a difference. Here was a man who understood that sometimes action mattered more than station, that courage could be found in the most unlikely places. The butcher saw past Liu Bei's humble appearance to the noble heart that beat beneath. Intrigued by this chance encounter, the two men decided to continue their conversation in a nearby tavern. As they sat sharing wine and discussing the dire state of the empire, they discovered they shared not just concern for their homeland, but a genuine respect for each other's character. Liu Bei admired Zhang Fei's directness and passionate commitment to justice, while Zhang Fei was drawn to Liu Bei's thoughtful nature and quiet dignity. It was in this tavern that they encountered the third member of their future brotherhood. Guan Yu cut an imposing figure as he entered the establishment. Standing over 6 feet tall with a magnificent beard that reached his chest, he possessed an almost otherworldly presence. His eyes held a depth that spoke of wisdom beyond his years, and there was something about his bearing that commanded immediate respect. Guan Yu had been a wanderer, a man fleeing from his past. In his youth, he had killed a local bully who had been terrorizing innocent people in his hometown. Though his actions had been just, they had forced him to leave everything behind and live as a fugitive. He had spent years traveling the roads, honing his skills with various weapons. particularly his beloved Guandao, a massive polearm that few men could even lift, let alone wield with deadly precision. Like Liu Bei and Zhang Fei, Guan Yu had been deeply troubled by the Yellow Turban Rebellion. He had seen firsthand the suffering it caused as he traveled from town to town. Villages lay in ruins, families torn apart, children left orphaned by the chaos. The sight of such injustice stirred something primal within him, a desire to stand against the darkness that threatened to consume the land. As the three men talked deep into the night, they discovered an almost supernatural compatibility. Liu Bei's wisdom and noble bearing provided natural leadership. Zhang Fei's fierce loyalty and combat prowess offered unwavering support, and Guan Yu's martial skill and unwavering moral compass gave them the strength to face any challenge. Each brought unique strengths that perfectly complemented the others, creating a synergy that was greater than the sum of its parts. They spoke of their shared dreams of restoring peace to the empire, of their desire to serve the Han dynasty and protect the innocent. They found in each other not just allies but true kindred spirits, men who understood that some causes were worth dying for. As dawn approached, they realized they had found something precious and rare. Brothers not of blood, but of choice, bound together by shared values and mutual respect. The decision to formalize their bond came naturally. They had already begun to think of themselves as brothers, so why not make it official? The idea of the oath ceremony emerged from their conversation organically, a way to sanctify what they all felt in their hearts. They chose the peach garden behind Zhang Fei's property for their ceremony. It was early spring, and the peach trees were in full bloom, their delicate pink and white flowers creating a canopy of beauty overhead. The setting seemed perfect for such a momentous occasion, a place where nature itself seemed to bless their union. The three men gathered the necessary materials for their ritual: incense to carry their prayers to heaven, wine to seal their oath, and offerings to present to the gods. They had studied the ancient texts and knew the proper forms for such ceremonies. This wasn't to be a casual promise between friends, but a sacred vow that would bind them for life. As they prepared for the ceremony, each man reflected on what this moment meant. For Liu Bei, it represented hope that he might finally have the support needed to make a real difference in the world. For Zhang Fei, it meant finding brothers who shared his passion for justice and wouldn't be intimidated by his fierce nature. For Guan Yu, it offered the chance to belong somewhere again, to have a family after years of wandering alone. The ceremony itself was both simple and profound. They lit the incense and watched as the fragrant smoke rose toward the heavens, carrying their intentions to the gods above. They poured wine into 3 cups, the red liquid symbolizing the blood they would shed for each other and their cause. Then, with solemn dignity, they knelt before the makeshift altar they had constructed. Liu Bei, as the eldest and most articulate, spoke the words that would bind them together. Though we were not born on the same day of the same month in the same year, we wish to die on the same day of the same month in the same year. We swear before heaven and earth that we will be loyal to the Han dynasty, that we will protect the innocent, and that we will never abandon each other, come what may. Zhang Fei and Guan Yu repeated the oath, their voices strong and clear in the morning air. They drank the wine, sealing their vow with this ancient ritual. As they raised their cups, the morning sun broke through the peach blossoms, bathing them in golden light that seemed to confirm heaven's approval of their bond. But their oath went beyond mere personal loyalty. They swore to dedicate their lives to ending the chaos that plagued the empire, to stand against tyranny wherever they found it, and to serve the greater good even at the cost of their own lives. They understood that the road ahead would be difficult, that they would face challenges that would test their resolve and their bond. Yet they also knew that together, they could accomplish what none of them could achieve alone. The immediate result of their oath was the formation of their first military unit. They pooled their resources, modest though they were, to recruit and equip a small force of local volunteers. Liu Bei's natural leadership abilities, combined with his royal lineage, helped attract followers who believed in the cause of imperial restoration. Zhang Fei's family wealth provided the funds needed for weapons and supplies, while his fierce reputation helped intimidate potential enemies. Guan Yu's martial skills and tactical knowledge gave their small force a fighting capability far beyond what their numbers might suggest. Their first campaigns against the Yellow Turban rebels were modest affairs, but they established the pattern that would define their partnership for decades to come. Liu Bei provided the strategic vision and diplomatic skills. Zhang Fei brought raw courage and inspirational leadership on the battlefield, and Guan Yu served as their military tactician and most formidable warrior. What made their partnership truly special wasn't just their individual talents, but the way they complemented and supported each other. Liu Bei's sometimes overly cautious nature was balanced by Zhang Fei's impulsiveness, while Guan Yu's rigid moral code was tempered by Liu Bei's political pragmatism. When one of them faltered, the others were there to provide support and guidance. The bond they forged in that peach garden became the foundation for everything that followed. Through victories and defeats, through moments of triumph and periods of desperate struggle, their oath remained unbroken. They would face separation, capture, and seemingly impossible odds, yet their commitment to each other never wavered. Their meeting and subsequent oath represented more than just a personal alliance. It symbolized hope for the empire itself. In an age when loyalty was often bought and sold, when brothers turned against brothers and sons betrayed fathers, the three sworn brothers stood as an example of what was possible when men of honor came together for a righteous cause. The Peach Garden Oath became legend, not just because of what these three men would eventually accomplish, but because it represented the very best of human nature, the capacity for selfless loyalty, the willingness to sacrifice for others, and the power of shared ideals to bind people together across all barriers of birth and circumstance. As a word of their oath spread, it inspired others to similar acts of loyalty and sacrifice. The very idea that three men from such different backgrounds could come together as brothers offered hope to a fractured empire. It suggested that perhaps the old bonds of loyalty and honor weren't completely dead, that there were still those willing to fight for something greater than themselves. Their story reminds us that the greatest partnerships often begin with the smallest moments: a sigh of frustration, a word of encouragement, a shared drink in a tavern. Sometimes the most profound connections are forged not in palaces or great halls, but in humble places where honest hearts can recognize each other across the barriers of class and circumstance. The three brothers' first meeting in that peach garden would echo through history, inspiring countless others to similar acts of loyalty and sacrifice. Their oath became a template for brotherhood that transcended blood relations, showing that the bonds we choose can be every bit as strong as those we inherit. And that's how the three brothers of Shu Han first met, through a shared desire to serve their country in its darkest hour. Liu Bei, the humble sandal maker with imperial blood, Zhang Fei, the hot-tempered butcher with a heart of gold, and Guan Yu, the righteous warrior destined for legend, found each other not through fate alone, but through their common cause against the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Their meeting in that tavern and subsequent oath in the peach garden would echo through history, proving that the strongest bonds are forged not by blood, but by shared purpose and unwavering loyalty. Though their individual stories began in different places, their destinies became forever intertwined in that moment when three strangers chose to become brothers.